Everybody, we are ready to get started. A happy Wednesday to you all. Thank you so much for joining us today. My name is Jennifer Morse. I'm with MadCap Software. Today, I am so excited to introduce Thad Miller, who is the Technical Content Director for Environmental Products at LI-COR Biosciences. Now, LI-COR is such an interesting company. They've been around a long time, and they're on the forefront of developing systems that support things like plant research, gas analytics, drug discovery, protein research, and more. And Thad, being there for some time, saw the need to better integrate the content authored and managed in Flare by the technical writers with the corporate website, which was managed by a different team altogether. So Thad's going to talk a bit more about the challenge that he saw and that he faced and how he was successful in blending these two worlds together. So thank you so much, Thad, for joining today. We're excited to learn about this with you. And we do have a lot to cover as a group. So I just want to cover a couple of housekeeping items before we begin. So as friendly reminder, if you've joined this webinars with us before, you know, but for those of you who are new, we will be recording this. So as soon as the webinar is done and we compile everything, we'll be sending out a link to view the recording to everybody who registered. So if you have to pop out early, not to worry, you'll get a complete viewing of everything. We also have a questions panel. You can use the chat panel there in the GoToWebinar console. So if any questions come up during the presentation, we're going to get to some of those at the end. If we don't get to all of them, we'll be sending out a question and answer panel to everybody who's registered. So we'll do our best to get to them all live together. So again, welcome, Thad. I'm so glad you were able to take the time to talk with us today. I know you have a lot to cover, so I'm going to go ahead and turn it over to you.
All right, well, thanks, Jen, for inviting me to present this webinar today. It's really great to be able to share with other technical writers the problems that we had to solve in order to create a technical support website using Flare. And today I'm going to describe some of the challenges we faced in bringing together our marketing site and a Flare created support site, and how we solved these problems using server-side includes. I'll tell you just a little bit about me just to help you understand how I learned the technologies I'm describing today. So I've been technical writing for a little over 10 years. And I came into technical writing from a different educational background. In my professional work at LI-COR Biosciences, I write technical documentation and I use Flare to create the technical support website and product documentation for LI-COR's environmental product line. The company has several product lines, but I mostly work with the environmental product line, and that's what I'm going to describe today. So nearly everything that I know about HTML and CSS and JavaScript has been driven by my desire to be a better technical writer and my desire to be more proficient with Flare. So I've learned about web technologies in the context of Flare, and I'm definitely not a web developer of any sort, and some of the things I'm going to talk about today will reveal my ignorance on these topics. But my good fortune is to be with a web team and other technical writers who understand the problems that we need to solve and who help us solve them. And I'm truly indebted to these people. So let's get on to some more interesting things. Today I'm going to describe how we integrated a technical support website made with Flare into a marketing website using server-side includes. I'll describe what server-side includes are in terms that the novice can understand, and I'll describe how we use them to add components that were created by our web team to our Flare created support site. I'm going to show a quick demonstration in which I'll use server-side includes to join an HTML5 output from Flare with a make-believe company's website. And finally, I'll go over some risks and considerations, and I'll describe the challenges we faced in our implementation and the solutions that we found that led us to success. So our goal ultimately was to create a technical support website for LI-COR's environmental product line entirely from Flare, but integrate it with our marketing website. And for a little context, at LI-COR, we have a web team that creates our marketing website, and they were responsible for creating our technical support webpage where people accessed our technical content. Meanwhile, the technical writers were using Flare to produce HTML5 content that met many requirements, especially regarding findability with search engines and responsive design, among other things. But there were gaps that separated the Flare HTML5 outputs from the web pages we created by our web team. We wanted the entire technical support website, we wanted to create the entire technical support website with Flare but the requirements were beyond Flair's purpose and beyond my capabilities as a technical writer. We had some big challenges to overcome before we could meet those requirements, and clearly we wouldn't be able to meet them with Flair alone. One of the requirements was to maintain a consistent look and feel between our marketing and support websites, including the content delivered under the support site. And a big driver of the differences between our Flair output and our marketing site was the overall navigation in the header and footer. So I'd produce a header and footer in Flair, but it was always different from the header and footer that our marketing team put together. Another requirement was to avoid creating silos of content that were separate from the marketing pages and other product support pages. In our old model, when a customer would access our help content for a product, they were in an island of content that was separate from the other product marketing and support pages. We wanted it to be easy and seamless for customers to move between the marketing site and the technical support content, whether they clicked in to find content, whether they conducted a search of our website, or whether they entered our website from search engine results like Google. And a third requirement was to add content and features that were created by our web team inside of support pages, wherever they were required. So the support site needed a few simple web apps in the interface. But like I mentioned earlier, these were beyond my skills as a technical writer, and there was no simple way to create them in Flair alone. We wanted a solution that allowed our web developers to control content, design, and scripts for some elements of the support site, while allowing the technical writers to control the content. And our solution is something known as server-side includes. And if you look it up on Apache, what they say, apache.org, what they say is server-side includes are directives that are placed in HTML pages and evaluated on the server while the pages are being served. I'm going to simplify this just a little bit, so bear with me. Server-side includes let you add dynamically generated content to static content on a server before it is delivered to a client. So in other words, they can combine things with your Flair HTML5 output when people view that on a web page in a web browser. And it was my good fortune that LI-COR was already using this technology throughout our website, and the solution was ready to be implemented into Flair's HTML5 output. It really isn't an understatement to say that server-side includes were the keystone that enabled us to bridge the gap and create the support site for environmental products entirely from Flair. So what does a server-side include? The concept of a server-side include is similar to that of a snippet in Flair, but a snippet is added to a topic when the target is built. A server-side include, in contrast, is added to an HTML file when the file is processed and delivered to a web browser where the customer sees your help topic. So in our typical old workflow, technical writers would write in Flair over here, and we'd publish our content to an HTML5 server, a web server, and then our customers would view that in their web browser. We had web developers who created some site navigation and web apps and input forms and so on, and that stuff was on a different server. And when our customers would view it, they would get a kind of a dramatically different experience in our marketing content and than they got from our Flair outputs. But what we did with server-side includes was to combine the things that were created by our web team with our Flair output on a server, and then we send that to customers. And when they see this in a browser, they see that combination of things, and their browser and the people who view it are none the wiser as to how it was created. All this work happens on the server behind the scenes, and our customers would see clearly integrated content, or at least the appearance of integrated content. So what can be in a server-side include? Basically anything that goes into a web page. It can be HTML5 content, style sheets, or JavaScript. So a simple line of text to an advanced web feature. Practical examples that we use are headers and footers, and anything that you want to have repeated on many or all topics of a site. Or they can be more advanced tools. And on our technical support website, we offer a safety data sheet lookup tool. We have a dynamically updated customer training schedule, and we have input forms that record customer entered data into a database in response and return a software download as a result. So some more advanced web features in our website. So adding a server-side include is astonishing. Oh, so I skipped a line here. The code that constitutes a server-side include is called a directive. The format will depend on your server side, your server configuration, but here are some simple examples. The first one listed here will instruct the server to add today's date to a web page. The second example I've given here is what I wrote to call for a header in the demonstration project. And the third example is one I wrote to call for a sign-up form in the demonstration project. Your server-side include will be formatted just like an HTML file. And in this case, my includes have an XHTML extension. The extension that you'll use if you implement this will probably be different. And another thing to point out here is that these three examples are all formatted like an HTML comment. So if the browser for some reason fails to process the directive, if the server fails to process the directive, the web browser on the end, the client, is simply going to ignore it. There will just be nothing there. So adding a server-side include is astonishingly simple. You paste the directive into a topic or a master page in Flair's text editor. The directive can go inside the HTML tags, inside the head tags, or inside the body tags. And then you publish the output to a suitably configured server. And the files that are referenced by the directives also need to be present on the server. So I'm going to do a quick demonstration, and I thought it would be fun to start with one of MadCap's own templates and create a make-believe marketing website as a counterpart to the HTML5 output from the template. And I selected the Cardiff theme, and I used their logo here to inspire a fake company called the Your Logo Company. I used this Cardiff theme, the output from this Cardiff theme I used the Cardiff theme HTML5 output as the technical support website for this fake company. And I used that design to drive the color scheme of the make-believe marketing website. And as you're going to see in a moment, the technical support website and marketing website both share a header, footer, and contact form that are added using server-side includes. So I'm going to jump out of this slideshow real fast, and I'm going to head over to Flair. So for those of you who are wondering, I'm working on a Mac, but I'm running a virtual machine that has Windows. So here we see Flair running on the virtual machine. And I'm going to just build the original Cardiff output for you. Actually, I pre-built it, so we can just take a look at it here. So it looks nice. We have a nice clean header with a search bar and a nice clean footer. And this is a Flair output, so it has all of the accoutrements that you'd expect from a Flair output, all the great content management, but it's not well integrated with another site. So I'm going to show you how I modified this in order to accommodate the server-side includes. So I pre-built this, and I'm just going to open it. And what you see here is the Cardiff theme, and it looks much more sparse. So one thing I did was I removed the header. Because the header had the search bar, I needed to add a search proxy to the master pages, and that's what you see here, creating this search bar. And I also removed the footer. I had to add some padding to the top to make space for the header that's going to be injected by the server. And I had to make a few other changes in order to make this work. For the sake of completeness, I also added a grid to the search results page, and that was just to make some columns. And I added the server-side include directives to the master pages and topics wherever they were needed. So let's take a look in Flair. Here I've opened up one of the master pages for the project that I modified. And you can see right here is the directive. It looks like a comment, but this calls for a file called header.xhtml. Here's another include that I added. And again, this is a comment inside of a div. It calls for the sign up form. And here's the third one that I added to this page. And this one calls for the footer. So like I said earlier, these are comments, or they're formatted like comments. So if the browser or if the server fails to process the directive, your web browser is simply going to ignore it, as it does right here in this output. So I'm going to publish this to the server. Just going to click publish. Flair takes just a second, sends over the files. Incidentally, there were no changes. And I have configured my Macintosh to run a server. So basically, I set up what would be the equivalent to like a testing server on this Mac. And this server is processing the files in exactly the same way that a real web server might if it were on the internet. And one way you can tell that this is a server is because it says localhost here in the address bar, and I'm using port 8080, which is just kind of a default configuration for a server. So let's just take a look here at the fake marketing page that I made for the Your Logo company. Here you have a header, here's a contact us form, and here's a footer, and these three things are all added using server-side includes. I made a products page just for a little bit of fun. You can see still the header, the contact us form, and the footer. And I made a services page for a little more fun. We see still this header, this contact form, and this footer. And so far, you've just had to believe me that these are added by the server. But now let's take a look at the HTML5 output from Flare that's published to the server. And you can see here the header, you can see the contact us form, and you can see the footer. And I was having a little fun, so I just added the today's date server-side include just for a little more fun. So let's look around in here and see how this works as we go through the Flare output. I'm going to do a search, and I know that this word is used frequently in the output. Here we have the search results. I have two columns created by a grid, but that's not what I came to talk about today. In our search results, you see the header. We have the sign up sheet, and at the bottom, you have the footer. And we can go into any of these pages and see all of those same three elements. So every page in this Flare output has the header and the footer and the contact us form that are added by server-side includes. So one thing you may have noticed is that this support tab right here has remained highlighted as we navigated through the Flare output. And to make this work, well, I did a little internet search for highlight current page or something like that, and I found a really elegant solution that uses cascading style sheets. It's a CSS only solution. And I'm going to show you this rather than describe it, because I think that the description is a little hard to understand, but if you can see it using inspect element, that will just make a lot more sense. So what I did here was I'm looking at the code that makes this web page for the products page. And right here in the body, there's a class called products. And right here in our list, there's also a class called products, and this is a unique combination. And in our style sheet, when we have that unique combination, our style sheet says body class products, list class products, apply this background color. And that unique combination, or each page has a unique combination. I'm going to just dig in here, and this might make a little more sense after you see it a few more places. The services page, the body has a class called services, and that list item has a class called services. And that combination here in our style sheet, body services and list services, once again has the background color. So how's this work in our Flare output? Well, exactly the same way. In the Flare master pages, I added a class to the body called support. And this list item also has a class called support. So the body class support and the list item support is a unique combination specified in our style sheet here to have a gray background color. Now that was just the solution I came up with for this demonstration. If you implement something like this at your company or somewhere else, your solution may be very different from this, but I wanted to do this to show how easy it is and how simple it is to just put this all together. So there are a few more things I want to show in here. And if you're still with me, one thing we can look at is the code that makes the server-side include directive. So I'm going to head back to the products page, and I'm going to do an update to the text here that makes this. So this file, if you'll just believe me, is the XML that makes this contact us form. I'm going to do an inspect element on this, and I'm going to show you that code. If I expand all of this, you'll see that from here on down, this XML or this HTML is identical to what we have in this include file. So this HTML is being injected into this web page by the server. And just for fun, I'm going to change this here. Let's say that the graphic design team or the web team changes this to say, sign up for our newsletter. And they make that change. You're on your web page, You refresh the page, and you can see that change is implemented now on this page. If we head over to the services page, it still says emails because it just loaded from our browser's cache. But when you hit refresh, now it says sign up for our newsletter. And we're going to head over to the Flare output, and it still says emails because it just loaded from our cache. But when I refresh it, now it says sign up for our newsletter. And this change is going to be throughout the entire Flare output. And everywhere that this include file is called for, it's updated. So what that shows is how updating a include file can make a change across your whole website, including some content that's in your Flare output, and you didn't have to change anything at all as a technical writer. So that's everything I wanted to cover in the demonstration. And I'll return to the slideshow. So the things I described today in this demonstration are pretty simple, but there are some risks, and there are things you'll have to do, and you might have to put forth some real effort to make this work in real life. One risk is that your include files might load additional style sheets. And since the styles follow the rules of inheritance, those style sheets can change the look of your HTML5 and create style sheet conflicts. There can be style sheet conflicts for styles that you have written into your style sheet in Flare, or there can be consequences for the style sheets that Flare creates for its skins and everything else that Flare does. And the styles will cascade, meaning that they are inherited from a previous definition, and each subsequent style sheet that loads is given priority over a previous one. What that means is that you may have to find creative solutions to style sheet conflicts. Some of the issues that arise can be solved in your style sheet with a combination of classes and complex selectors, or you may need to find other solutions like the dreaded important declaration or other creative solutions. So as an example, my style sheet, the one I use to create the technical support website at LI-COR, probably has a couple dozen lines dedicated just to correcting issues between style sheets. And it isn't really an elegant solution, and it's not necessarily the best practice. But in a world where compromise is possible and we strive to find creative solutions, we can accomplish great things. So another risk is with JavaScript conflicts. And these may happen if there's anything that causes issues with the scripts that are called in a server-side include and the scripts that are part of Flare's HTML5 output. One example, an issue I had to resolve, was with Flare 2018, the fixed position menu skins, when combined with our animated marketing site header, caused a problem, and they would both just stop working. So in this case, I was able to control the position of the menu skin using my own simple JavaScript, and I disabled the feature in Flare's menu skin, and that solved the problem. Another case, our web team had to troubleshoot an issue with an animated spinning wheel that caused a feature to hang up. Our web team removed the spinning wheel, and I think it was spin.js or something similar. But my point here is there are potential JavaScript issues, but with some creativity and determination, there are potential solutions as well. So your success with server-side includes and server-side templating will depend on your backend web developers doing things a certain way. And in my case, I was lucky. Our web team was already using server-side scripting to combine things throughout our website, and everything that I needed in order to use them was already in place. I just needed to coordinate with our web team to sort out the details, do a lot of work in the style sheet to make things look right, and get permission to publish to the server. Our backend web developers did more to make a robust system that worked well with our marketing site. And I don't know many of the details, but I do know that my success really depended upon them. So make friends with your backend web developers and make friends with your web team. They need to understand your needs in order to help you out. And here are a couple of tips. They might not be really meaningful to you today in the context of this presentation, but if you're working with server-side includes in Flare, these are a couple of things that tripped me up, and there are a couple of things that you might keep in mind as you're working. And one is reference the root directory for your includes. So with Flare, you can create a file structure for your topics, and that file structure is going to be present in your Flare output. And that means it might be a little bit hard to write exact file paths to server-side includes. But the solution is to reference the root directory. So if you reference the root directory, it'll be sort of like an absolute directory. It'll always be correct no matter where it's referenced from. Another thing to keep in mind is ask yourself what is coming along with this server-side include. Your server-side include could bring style sheets and JavaScript, and you might be encouraged to follow some poor practices. You wouldn't necessarily want to inject a style sheet into the middle of your web page, for example. So you just need to be mindful of how your web page is going to be put together by the server. And then a third point is reload the page often. So if you click a link and you don't see the expected changes, it could well be that the page was loaded simply from your browser's cache instead of from the server. So do Control-R, Command-R on a Mac to refresh your page often and get the new files from your server. And this is true whether you're updating the include files or whether you're publishing updated content from Flare. Refresh often. So I hope that these risks that I described don't scare you away. Our solution has been very robust so far. We have a team of writers all working on the same source files and a web team, and this system, once set up, has worked very well for us. The problems we encountered were solvable with determination and creativity, and I think that that's probably the case for many people. So what I would say is, don't be afraid to try something awesome, and be determined and be creative, and you can do it. So a quick conclusion. Server-side includes really were the thing that bridged the gap between our marketing website and our Flare HTML5 output. They actually made it possible to create the support site from Flare. And finally, there are risks, but in most cases, they are manageable. So before I conclude, I want to extend some thanks to some of my coworkers. Without these people, I wouldn't be doing this here today. One is Sam Eagle, Thad Meyer, and Harika Yadidi. They do some back-end web work for us, and the entire web team at LI-COR have been very supportive of this effort. And without them, like I said, I wouldn't be doing this today. And so those are all my slides, and I can turn it back over to you, Jen, if you want to give a conclusion.
Sure. Yeah, no, thank you so much. That was really informative, and I hope that everybody was able to take a little bit away here, maybe feel a little bit inspired. Reminder, I'm going to just mention this slide, but if anybody has any questions about what Thad was talking about, feel free to pop them in the chat window there. We'd be happy to take them. But reminder for everybody that we've got our Mad World Conference coming up in April. If anybody is a past attendee listening, there is a discount at the end of the month for those who have attended in the past. So definitely get in touch with us to learn about that. And then you can still register by March 15th to save a little bit, up to $400. And so we do hope to see you all there if you haven't already registered. An amazing panel of speakers, great venue, lots of opportunities to take your skills to the next level. So we do hope you can join. So again, Thad, maybe you want to throw your contact details up because I think it may be helpful for those, if you think about some questions after the webinar, I'm sure you'd be happy to answer those. So there's your slide. So there's Thad's contact information. It looks like we've got a couple questions flowing. Let me just take this. It was a great question. A question came through. Which CMS is running on LI-COR's web server? And that may mean, maybe you could clarify a little bit, Johannes, maybe, I think you're referring to what's housing the marketing content, just generally serving up the web pages in general. Is that, maybe you could clarify that? Yes, so I think that really is what's the sort of the web, if there is a web CMS running on the web server that's essentially serving up the general marketing content and the server side includes.
I don't know if I know the answer to your question, which means that the answer is I don't know. I know our web team develops using Sublime. Most of their work is developed in a text editor. And I don't know if they use a formal content management system or whether we use simply a system that they created. So I guess the answer is I don't know.
Well, we'll take that as a lookup. That's a good question.
I might have to ask someone who does that to get back with you.
Yeah. Another interesting question. I'm not sure if you have any experience with this, but this is sort of interesting. So one of the viewers is trying to integrate Swagger docs into Flare content. Curious if you've had any experience with that in the past. I know it's a little
I'm,
bit outside of the scope of what we're talking about today, but I think it was more out of curiosity.
I am unfamiliar with Swagger, but maybe it's something that I should investigate. So I'm sorry to
Okay.
be unable to answer your question.
No, that's fine. Not a problem. Okay, so it looks like a few folks are jotting stuff down, but you're right. Okay, so for REST API documentation. So a little bit outside of what Thad's doing here, but it may be a great question that we can send some information on as a lookup item for you. So thanks
Yeah,
for
I'd be
asking.
happy, Jen, to investigate some of these and look into them a little bit and try to come up with a better answer. I'm
Wonderful.
really kind of on the edge of my expertise. When I talk about servers and we talk about CMSs, I quickly get out of the realm of knowledge for me and into a realm of mystery. So, but I can take a little bit of time to look into those questions and follow up with you.
Not a problem. Yeah, and we'll certainly help. Well, great. Well, Thad, thank you so much. And again, for everybody that's on, Thad's contact information is up there. If there's anything that you think about after we end the webinar, feel free to drop him a line. Want to thank everybody for joining. Thad, thanks for taking the time to prepare this. Lots of great tips here. I think that the takeaway is it can be done. A little bit of investigation, some trial and error, working with the right team can really be instrumental, it sounds like, for making this a good success. So thanks again
Yeah.
for taking the time, and thanks everybody for joining. I hope everybody has a great, productive rest of the week, and we hope to see you on the next webinar. So thanks again. And we will be sending out a link to the recording for everybody, just another reminder. So if you missed certain part of it, you'll have the whole presentation as soon as we're done. So again, thanks again, everybody. Thank you, Thad, and we'll see you on the next one.
All right. Bye bye.